What is going on, people? Yo, this week we are going to talk about imposter syndrome. For those of that you do not know what that is, T, talk to the people. Tell them what imposter syndrome is.
Hey guys. So, imposter syndrome is basically the condition of feeling anxious and not experiencing success inside, despite like all that you've been able to achieve. So, say for example, like, oh, I got really high test scores and I got into the school, but I'm sitting here like I don't even know how I got in here. Like everything is so hard, but I want to give up. Like you don't feel like you're doubting yourself all of a sudden, even though you've come so far, like you've done so much work. So I feel like that's imposter syndrome, and it can leave you feeling like an fraud or like an imposter, and like you can start doubting your abilities. So yeah,
Okay.
pops, have you ever dealt with that before?
Imposter syndrome, yes, I have. I had never felt that I was an imposter before until I started coaching. And when I started coaching, I realized this is like 3 years ago. When I started coaching, I realized that I was not living up to the standards that I was helping my clients and giving my clients all this knowledge and giving my clients all this love and giving my clients all this self acceptance and talking about patience and things that I wasn't doing that. Like I would tell my clients about doing certain things, and probably about 75% of it I was like following and I was actually doing myself. But my patience, though, when I was at home, it was ridiculous. Like I had no patience. Like, and I was just like always on edge. So in that aspect, I was like, damn, I'm a fraud. Like I'm not living up to what I'm supposed to be living up to. And am I even good enough to do this? Like, can somebody like myself, can I help people and teach people to be good to themselves and do all these things if I'm not doing it myself? And then I started slowly doubting myself, like, yo, like what's going on, man? Like, should you even be coaching? Like, is this something that that you really passionate about, that you good at? That and so yeah, I definitely had imposter syndrome, and it was really, really tough for me to even acknowledge it. It took me going to therapy, and she had to finally acknowledge that to my therapist because she asked me, she's like, "Do you ever feel like you have imposter syndrome because of some of the behaviors that you've exhibited since you've been coaching?" And I was like, at first I was like, "Nah, nah, 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 I don't have imposter syndrome." But after I thought about it, I had to come back later on and be like, "Yeah, damn, I do. I did feel like that." And it was tough for me. It was tough for me to acknowledge. How about you? Have you?
Yeah, I feel
There she
like
goes.
kind of, sorta. I feel like mine was. Oh, sorry, mine was kind of related to more so school wise, in terms of like me doubting my own success and how far I worked success and how hard I worked to get my degree and stuff. And other people, graduating but have apartments and houses and full-time jobs and stuff like that. So to me, I felt like I was doubting myself and overlooking my own success and my own achievements because I was kind of comparing myself to other things,
Mm.
instead of just unrealistic expectations for what I had going on. So yeah, like my family's not a millionaire or a billionaire, so I don't know why I expect like I don't know. It's hard. It's kind of hard to explain, but yes, to answer your question the short way, I have, I think, experienced that.
Yeah, I mean,
So my next,
comparing yourself to others is like the biggest form of self sabotage that you can possibly do to yourself. And not only is it just self sabotage, but it also just leaves you in a sense of, am I good enough? Because I see Susie Q over here. Susie Q got a house, a condo. She got this, she got that, but you don't know what it took for Susie Q to get there. So that's one thing that you got to think about when you start comparing yourself to others. I'll give you like a real quick thing, real quick, is that I had a client that whose parents wanted him to come work with me, and when they did, it was close to the pandemic about being over or whatnot, and they were just saying like how all of the kids that he had went to school with, the majority of them had graduated. A lot of them had graduated, and here he was, and he had not graduated yet. And I was like, well, if you're going to compare the people that graduated, you got to also compare the people that aren't here anymore. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, well, because there's some people that didn't make it in the pandemic and that committed suicide or died because of COVID, So when you do make sure you do comparisons, you make sure you compare both sides. And they were just like, oh, snap. I never thought about it like that. So yeah, that comparing yourself to other people, man, that can lead to that. So when you do compare, or if you do compare, which I don't think that you should, you got to compare both sides because you don't know what Susie Q is going through at home to be able to afford that home and that those nice cars that she has. You don't know how she's dropping it on the pole. You don't know what she's doing. So
Oh,
just don't compare. So what are
right.
some forms of imposter syndrome, T?
So, from what I understand, there are four types. One being the perfectionist. So, those people have like extremely high standards for themselves. And even like the slightest little mistake or the slightest setback will be like the end all be all. Like, oh my God, I suck. I'm defeated. Like, am I, who am I? Like, just questioning themselves after that because they're just so, I want this to be perfect, perfect, perfect. And then after that is superhuman. And from what I understand, these are the people who overwork themselves constantly and outwork their coworkers and their peers and stuff because they use that to validate themselves. So
Mm,
they set really high expectations for themselves professionally and personally as well. And then the natural genius, this is probably somebody like I feel like maybe we did this to my sister Kennedy, where everything was coming in so easy to her at elementary school, and then now you're in middle school, high school, and things aren't coming so easy to you, and it's kind of like, oh my gosh, what the heck? And it's kind of like, oh, I'm literally a natural genius. Like all this stuff is coming easy to me, but now it's like I have to work and I have to actually study like this. It's not just gonna be on the paper, you know. So in terms of like that, I feel like in that transition, some kids may think like, "Oh, I'm not as smart as I thought I was," or I'm not as good as I thought I was," like stuff like that. And then the expert, these people like to do research and stuff and get like a lot of knowledge before they start something new, and then really want to like have a bunch of skills that they can use in order to be an expert on that certain subject. So this like the often relentlessness of trying to find all the answers and stuff can cause imposter syndrome because if they don't know something, they're gonna be like, oh my gosh, I don't know anything, like stuff like that. Like they're gonna self implode. Sorry for that. And then the last one, the soloist, is basically that person does not ask for help. Like they'll die before they ask for help. They find it really challenging to ask for help, and they think that once they ask for help, it minimizes their own abilities instead of taking it as, oh, I have to continuously learn how to do things in my life. Like it's a sign of growth, and it's not a sign of, oh, you're helpless. So yeah, do you kind of
okay.
identify with any of those?
I can't say that I necessarily identify with those, but I agree with those. I'll tell everyone how I got through my imposter syndrome, and that was simply like I talked to my therapist about it, and I knew I needed to make some changes. So it started with just little things and just working on my patience, reading up books about how to, be more patient, doing more listening, and starting to question things, but not in a accusatory way, but just question things in a nice calm way. And so that has helped me work on my patience, has helped me be kind to myself and helped me be more gentle with myself because I was not. And if you can't be good to yourself, you can't be good to others. And so I thought that I was being good until, like I said, my therapist asked me that question: do you ever battle with imposter syndrome? And so since then I don't. I literally live the way that I coach, and that is with compassion, that is with love, that is with understanding, that is with working on tools to better myself. So I don't have, I can't honestly say that I have it anymore because I know that I'm good at what I do, and I know I belong here. I know I deserve to be doing what I'm doing because I'm dope. I'm a dope coach. Like for real, if you get an opportunity to work with me, you should because I'm really good at what I do. Period.
Sure.
So there are some ways though that you can overcome imposter syndrome if you do have it. One, focus on your values and remind yourself what really matters to you. I don't want to go into each one, but you can kind of define it on your own. Also, try to reframe your mindset around growth. Your life and your career is a journey. It's a growth is essential for personal and professional development. So acknowledge the struggle. It's okay to do that. be kind to yourself. As I just said, that is one of the things that I had to learn how to do for myself, was to be kind to myself and realize that I'm human. I'm going to make mistakes. So is everyone else. Don't get too bad on myself. Don't beat myself up. Don't self-sabotage once I realize that I've made a mistake and just say F it and throw everything out the window. Nah, it's okay. You made a mistake. You went over a speed bump. You didn't jump off the cliff. It's all good. Just go back and just work on it. So those are just a couple of tips that I can say that like really do help myself out, and they could help you out. Um, instead in the last one, instead of wondering what others are thinking about you, make it a habit to get a meaningful feedback from those that you really trust and respect. So if you have family members, if you have friends that you really and truly respect, and you like, yo, I appreciate this person's opinion, you can ask them like, yo, how do you feel like I'm doing in my job? How do you feel like I'm doing in this relationship? How do you feel like I'm doing in that? And they'll give you their honest opinion. But instead of you just being in your head the entire time. So anyway, that concludes our session for today of imposter syndrome. I really and do hope that if you do have imposter syndrome, that we allowed you to identify, first of all, and second of all, come up with some tips. You are not alone. I've battled with it as well, and I'm a life coach. And so everyone has, I'm sure, had some sort of imposter syndrome at one particular time in their life. So the key to it all is being good to yourself, be patient with yourself, give yourself grace, and be good to yourself, because you are an amazing human being. And I believe it with all my heart that
Dope.
you are dope.
Dope.
Yeah, let's go.